And of course, meron tayong other types ng photography. Isa na dyan yung flash photography. It applies to the technique whereby exposures are made with illumination from one or more photograph. So, flash photography, nagamit tayo ng flash para ma-illuminate natin yung ating subject. Para siya yung maging focus kapag tayo ay kumuha ng photograph. Another one is the thermography. So, thermography is a kind of photography wherein we use laser beam radiation using laser beam film. Katulad ng infrared radiation yung ating ginagamit para tayo ay makakuha ng photos, it is useful for military. It emitted by all objects even with or without illumination. Very common na nakikita natin to sa mga airports, 'di ba? Kapag may bagong sakit na ayaw natin pumunta or maka-affect sa ating bansa, so we are using thermography to measure the temperature of the person. So as you can see, nakikita natin kung ano yung temperature niya, kung siya ba ay nag-exceed beyond normal temperature. Another one is the aerial photography. It is a kind of photography applied for photomapping. Very common na ginagamit ang aerial photography in taking photos of a certain location o kaya naman yung terrain. And ginagamit din yan specifically kapag after ng bagyo para makita natin kung gaano yung naging damage ng bagyo or ng certain calamity dun sa isang lugar. So, hindi lang yun, napakadami pang uses ng ating aerial photography. So, from above, we are taking photos para makita natin kung ano yung situation on the ground. Underwater photography. So, very common naman yan. We are taking photographs, things underwater. We are photographing things underwater. And yung mga camera na ginagamit natin dyan is very high-powered just to, para ma-sustain niya or para at least makatagal siya doon sa pressure na meron doon sa water. Lalo na kapag medyo may kalaliman na yung ating dinadive o yung ating lugar, so kailangan na natin ng mga alagang suitable cameras for the kind of pressure beyond or dun sa pinakamalalim na lugar dyan sa ating karagatan. So, hindi pwede doon yung ating mga camera phone kasi possible talaga na mag-break yan. Okay? Panoramic photography, so sa mga camera phone, meron tayong ganyan. Panoramic, napaka-wide ng ating depth of field. So, it involves using specialized equipment or software that captures images with elongated fields of view. It is sometimes known as wide format photography. Take note of that, also known as wide format photography. Okay, it is a special technique that stitches. We are stitch o parang kino-connect natin yung mga multiple images from the same camera together to form a single wide photograph. So, hindi na natin kailangan pa na mag-take ng pictures ng isa sa left, sa gitna, at sa kanan. With the use of panoramic camera, we can capture the whole area on a single touch or on a single picture itself. Okay, so wide photograph, either vertical or horizontal. So moving on, we are now discussing the history of photography. History of photography. So napakarami nating important personalities and important dates here on the history of photography. Just make sure that at least you memorize o at least aware kayo kung sino and ano yung mga naging contribution niya and kung anong date niya yon na invent or na contribute. Okay, so first is yung mga important personalities. Magsimula tayo kay Aristotle. Aristotle on 347 to 322 before Christ. Okay, he is a famous Greek philosopher who invented the first pinhole camera. Take note of this, okay? Si Aristotle ang kauna-unahan na naka-invent ng pinhole camera na later on tinawag siya as camera obscura. Take note of that, camera obscura. It is an Italian word for dark room chamber, which is literally translated as a darkened fax. So more on madidiscuss natin itong si camera obscura kapag naandun na tayo sa history ng ating camera. Okay? Artists or painters, in order to get accurate perspective of natural scene and scale of their subjects, use the camera obscura. He was the one who succeeded in recording the principle that light entering through a small hole produces an inverted image or figure. So si Aristotle yung naunahan na naka-invento again ng pinhole camera. So before, hindi siya ganito kaliit, ha? Yung mga cameras natin, hindi rin yung nakikita natin ng mga DSLR. Ang camera dati ay isang room. Isang buong room na madilim sa loob at isang maliit lang na butas na doon lang pumapasok yung light, and then through that according dito si Aristotle yung naka-discover na kapag yung light na yon pumasok doon sa maliit na butas doon sa room na madilim talaga, nakakapag-create yon ng inverted image, baligtad na image. Kaya naman ang ginagawa ng mga artist dati ay pumapasok sila doon sa room na yon, binubuksan nila yung maliit na butas at doon nila ginuguhit yung kanilang yung kung ano man yung image na kanilang gustong iguhit doon. Yung ginagawa niya, papasok sila doon, tapos doon lang nila talaga ipipaint. So hindi siya katulad ngayon na isang click lang, meron ka na agad picture. So yung before talagang dinodrawing talaga nila. Next is Alhazen. So si Alhazen naman is an Arabian scholar who found out that light entering a small hole on a wall or shattered window of a darkened room cast an upside-down picture of the scene outside onto the opposite wall. He used this in observing the solar eclipse by entering a dark room with a pinhole opening to avoid harming the eye. He was considered to be the one who invented the camera. Okay, take note of that. Alhazen is considered to be the one who invented the camera. So, siya daw ang kauna-unahan or kinukonsider natin na naka-invento ng camera. Next one is John Baptist Porta. He is an artist and scientist in pseudoscience magic and made use of the camera obscura and replaced the hole with a lens which made the image brighter and sharper. So kung maaalala nyo, si Aristotle, ang ginawa niya is butas lang yun, and then yung painter or yung artist papasok sa loob just to paint. Si John Baptist Porta naman, instead of just yung hole lang, gumamit na siya ng lens para daw maging malinaw, maging sharp yung image na nakukuha doon. But pareho lang din ng pag-take ng photos. Pumapasok pa rin yung artist dun sa loob para iguhit yung image sa labas. Okay? He was the first one who introduced the lens. Next is Johann Heinrich Schultz. He was a German scientist or anatomist who discovered the silver nitrate. When he exposed it to light, it turns purple. He got interested in his finding, and that fair later, he discovered that the evening action was not due to the heat but light. He finally concluded that silver nitrate is sensitive to light and capable of producing images. So, na-experience nyo na siguro or nakita nyo na, di ba, kapag yung magnifying lens ay tinapat mo sa araw, nakakasunog siya ng gamit, right? Dito naman kay Johann Henry Schultz, instead of using hindi magnifying glass yung ginamit niya, but silver nitrate. Yung silver nitrate na yun, itong component na to, chemical component na to, sa ngayon ginagamit natin siya sa mga photographic paper para makita natin ng yun yung smooth o yung glossy na doon sa picture. 'Di ba kapag nakapagpa-develop tayo dati ng picture, smooth yung picture, smooth yung surface nung picture. Yun yung silver nitrate. And siya yung kauna-unahan na nakadiscover na kapag ginamit niya yung silver nitrate na yan at in-expose niya yan sa araw, nagkakaroon siya ng chemical reaction. Nagkakaroon ng different colors. Okay? And then next is Thomas Wedgwood. He discovered that silver chloride is more sensitive than silver nitrate and thus more capable of recording and producing images. Okay? Yung si Thomas Wedgwood naman, again, yung silver chloride naman yung ginamit niya kasi mas sensitive daw yun sa light at mas nakakapag-capture ng image and nakakapag-produce ng pictures itself or ng images. Kung mapapansin nyo, this one is an image. Ibig sabihin, hindi yan nakalagay sa photographic paper or anything else. Nakalagay lang yan in a thin sheet of film. Nung time nila, wala pa silang film, ang ginagamit nila is a silver or may metal. Mamaya di-discuss natin. Yung metal na yun yung ginagamit para pag-recordan itong mga images na to. And kung mapapansin nyo din, na nung time nila, kailangang matagal yung exposure. So, bago pa na-create itong image na to, again, bago pa yan ma-create yung image na yan, tumagal yan ng either 4 hours of exposure or 8 to 12 hours of exposure. So, ganun katagal yung pag-take ng pictures dati. Kaya, kung mapapansin nyo, yung mga sinaunang pictures dati, talagang, lang sila, nakaganyan lang. Prim and proper, hindi sila nakangiti. Kasi, matagal. Napakatagal ng iuupo nila bago pa sila makuhaan ng picture. May 8 hours kang nakaupo. Kung nakangiti ka ng 8 hours, edi ngalay na ngalay ka. Kaya naman, kung mapapansin nyo, bakit para halos lahat sila inakasimangot? Kasi, ang tagal ng oras bago sila makuhaan talaga ng image. So, itong image na to na nakuha ni Thomas Wedgwood, matagal yan na exposure. Kaya very common na yung mga nakukuhaan nila na image ay yung mga non-living things. Kasi kapag living things, syempre, with that kind of hours of waiting, gagalaw at gagalaw ka. Paano kung biglang may nangati sa'yo, di ba? Di, nagdugulo na yung picture na nakukuhaan na dapat ay ng picture mo. So, kaya non-living things talaga yung ginagamit nila as a subject. Then, Joseph Nicéphore Niepce, noong 1816, he experimented by combining photosensitive materials with lithography to facilitate his endeavor in printmaking. Noong 1822 naman, he claimed some success achieving what he called point de vue. It is a smart images made by the camera obscura with more than 8 hours of exposure. So, kung mapapansin nyo, 1816, 8 hours of exposure. Yun yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na talagang napakatagal talaga ng pag-aantay mo, aantayin mo bago ka makuhaan ng picture. And he took the world's very first photograph called heliography. Okay? Heliography. Tandaan nyo yun ha, si Niepce sa heliography, and also take note of the spelling. Kasi siyempre pag nag-quiz tayo, wrong spelling ay wrong. Then next is Louis-Jacques Mandediguerre, a Parisian painter and theater designer who continued the efforts of Niepce to perfect a photographic process. Yung time na yan kasi ay si Nips, si Wedgwood, saka si Daguerre. Sila yung tatlong pioneer talaga for the photography. Namatay lang talagang meron silang magkakasama sila. Unang namatay si Wedgwood, and then yung kay Nips naman ay sila magkasama sila na natira ni Daguerre. So meron silang experimentation regarding with the photography. Tapos si Nips ay namatay. So supposedly dapat talaga si Nips ang magiging father of photography. But dahil sa kanya talaga yung idea, sa kanya nang galing. Pero nauna siyang namatay. Kaya naman kinuha ni Daguerre yung credit of being the father of photography. Kasi siya na yung doon sa tatlo, siya na lang yung natira. But supposedly, dapat talaga si Nips yun. Pero dahil nga unang namatay si Nips at si Daguerre yung nagtuloy, sa kanya napunta lahat ng credit. Okay? He invented the principle for silver plate photograph, and using the daguerreotype that produces one kind of picture on metal, which was presented on the French Scientific Academy. So, ginamit niya yung daguerreotype in Paris. Ito yung daguerreotype. Sa daguerreotype, as you can see dito, ito yung image na kukuhaan ng picture. Okay? And then, ito yung ating box camera. Dito. And then, so yan, hours of exposure. So, kung makikita nyo, talagang inverted ang image. So, ito yung talagang nakikita na image. And then, with the use of some chemicals, hanggang magiging ganito, hanggang sa maging talagang print out na, picture na. So, ganun sa daguerreotype process. So, gumagamit ng chemicals. Gumamit siya ng silver chloride para ma-preserve yung image na yon. But, then again, yung mga photographs na nakuha during their time, since matagal ang exposure, pero mabilis siyang mag-fade. Mabilis na mag-fade. Kaya, wala tayo halos proof or evidence ng mga, or wala tayo halos makita na talaga ang yung time nila na halos na ma-preserve natin ng mga image. Kasi mabilis mag-fade yung mga images na nakukuha. So, wala pa talaga tayong, o hindi pa na-invent nung time nila yung mga chemicals para ma-preserve yung images. Next is Matthew B. Brandy. Okay, so when the American Civil War broke out, he was able to preserve the scene with the use of a camera. So, nagkaroon ng Civil War, siya yung nakapag-preserve ng images or ng pictures na meron sa Civil War. Siya yung nakakuha ng pictures doon. Next is William Henry Talbot. Okay, ulitin ko, sino again yung father of photography? Si Louis Jacques Mande Daguerre. Si William Henry Talbot naman, siya naman yung father of modern photography. Kung si Daguerre, ang in-invent niya ay daguerreotype, si Talbot naman ay calotype, but later on, pinalitan niya yung name na yan into Talbotype. Okay? Talbotype. So, ipinatter niya na sa kanyang apelido. Calotype produced a negative picture on paper. The lights on the image were recorded as darks, the darks as lights. He presented it before the royal family of England. So, si calotype, ang mga negative pa lang yung sa film pa lang yung mga images na nakukuha. And, di ba, kung nakakita na ba kayo ng mga film, di ba, kapag itinapat mo yan sa liwanag, may mga image ka na makikita. So, more or less, ganun yung kay Henry Talbot. Correction, that is William Henry Fox Talbot. Hindi siya 4, okay? FOX yun. So, mali lang yung aking nailagay. Okay, so ito naman yung calotype. Ito ay yung mga metal sheets. Okay? So, ayan. So, as you can see, para siyang film. Pero metal yan. Hindi siya talaga totally na film. Kasi hindi pa na-invent ang film nung time na yan. So, ayan. So, hours of exposures. So, still, ganyan pa rin yung nakukuha. More on the side of gray and dark or black yung talagang makikita natin. White, gray, and black yung mga shades. So, wala pang mga colored photography nung time nila. Black and white. John W. Herschel. So, again, sa kanya nag-start yung term ng photography. So, siya talaga ang nag-create, parang nag-invent, nag-develop ng term na yan. He then suggested negative and positive in the following years. He pointed out images with a solution of hyposulfite of soda or hyposodium thiosulfate which he had discovered noong 1819. Again, uulitin ko, ang solution na ginamit niya para ma-preserve yung ating mga, o para hindi na agad mag-fade yung mga images na nakukuha during that time. Gumamit siya ng hyposulfite of soda or hypo o yung tinatawag na sodium thiosulfate. Next is Frederick Scott Archer. So si Archer naman, he pioneered the wet collodion process which took place of the calotype known as collodion type process. So ito yung collodion process. Okay, noong 1851. So, kailangan mo muna mag-take ng photo. So, saglit lang yung exposure niya. Hindi yung katulad dati na 4 to 8 hours of exposure. So, saglit na exposure lang sa light. And then, this one, and then yung metal plate. Yung metal plate ay this one from the camera. Yan, tatanggalin niya yan. And again ano yan, nasa dark room yan. And then this one, ipapolish niya yung yung plate. Tapos, lalagyan niya ng coating o lalagyan niya ng chemical. Tapos, ay huhugasan niya na. But, then again, yung time na yan, hindi pa rin ganun talaga siya nagtatagal, parang lifetime na nagtatagal yung image. So, talagang mabilis pa rin siya na mag-fade. And then, next is Daniel Barbaro. He introduced the use of lens in the camera. Again, magkaiba si Alhazen kay Barbaro when it comes to lens. Si Barbaro, gumamit lang siya ng lens sa mismong camera. Ulitin ko sa camera kasi si Alhazen ay dun sa camera obscura pa. At sa kanya naman, meron na tayo ditong camera. Sir Isaac Newton, an English philosopher, mathematician, and physicist, who discovered and proved that the strongest light is white light. He defended his theory by allowing a white light. Yung white light natin, it comes from the sunlight. From the sun. Ito yung sunlight na tinatawag natin. We call that white light. Kaya kung makikita natin sa drawing, di ba natin, ng mga grade 1? Nung mga grade 1 tayo, yellow ang nilalagay natin na kulay ng araw. But, ang ano talaga dyan is white. Supposedly, dapat white since hindi naman talaga natin nakikita na dilaw ang color ng rays ng sun. It is white. So, white light yun. It is a light from sun, o yung sunlight natin, again, that is white light. So, yung dinepend niya na yun, yung white light na yun, kapag nag-pass through siya sa prism, it will refract or diffract the light onto its component parts. Kaya yung sinasabi ko na yung white light na yun from the sun, once na it hits an object, possible na yung ibang light ay makikita natin yung colors. So, kapag sa prism, makakakita tayo ng Roy G. Biv. Yun yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina na yung white light na yun ay may mga different wavelengths. And yung different wavelengths na yun, it corresponds to a certain color. Next is Maxwell noong 1863. he discovered that the different effects with this application when color photography was discovered. So si Maxwell naman, nakita niya yung different effects ng white light kapag tumama sa prism na nagkakaroon ng different colors, doon pumapasok yung colored photography. So nakita niya na hindi lang naman pala black and white yung kaya natin na maiproduce na images or pictures. Pwede rin pala na colored. Then si Maddox, he successfully introduced the plate with gelatin. The roll film came and new brands of cameras with different lenses and mechanisms were placed in the market. So nung time ni Maddox ay nagkaroon na tayo ng roll film. Yung mga nakikita natin na Kodak, mga ganon, pero hindi ganon kaliit ha. Yung parang sa sinihan na malaki na film, ganon pa kalalaki yung film dati. And nagkaroon na rin ng different brands ng cameras with different lenses. Next is Andre Adolph Eugene Desperi. He popularized the small, cheap portrait. Anyone who could afford a picture of himself or herself during that time, yung time nila na tanging yung mga mayayaman lang, yung nakakapakuha ng pictures or ng photos. Yung mga portrait na nakita natin sa mga, pag mga England, sa England, di ba? Yung mga mayayaman lang ang meron. Yung mga mahirap, hindi nila afford na makapagpatake ng pictures. Kaya naman, na-invent itong si Desperi, yung mga cheap portrait. Malaliit lang yan. Na pwede nang ma-afford ng even yung mga mahirap. Next is si Nadar. Siya yung kauna-unahan na nakakuha ng aerial photographs using on a hot air balloon. So, nandun siya sa hot air balloon and then nag-take siya ng photos dun sa ground. Siya yung kauna-unahan na, again, who took the first aerial photograph. Next is si Sir William Abney. He discovered the use of hydroquinone. Take note of that. Isulat nyo ha. Hydroquinone as a developing agent in 1880 sa England. So, si William Abney, yung hydroquinone na to, ito yung ating chemical para ma-develop yung mga images doon sa film. And ginagamit din ito para ma-develop naman yung nakuha natin ng image from the film and pag tinransfer natin yan sa photographic paper. George Eastman. So siguro medyo familiar pa kayo sa Kodak. So siya yung founder ng Kodak. Founder ng Buddha Company na nag-introduce ng use ng roll film made of celluloid materials for the use by a portable camera. So yung ating mga film cameras, yung Kodak, ano pa ba yung other film dati, anong brand? Ang natandaan ko lang Kodak. So talagang siya yung yung company niya yung nakapag-produce ng Kodak during early 80s and late 90s. Si Piongen, noong 1995, he discovered X-ray photography which later became the basis of radiograph used by the doctors in measuring the heartbeat and see the other structure of the body. So, X-ray photography naman yung kay Piongen. D.O. Hill and Robert Adamson both used photographic portraits in painting. So, yung mga before, yung pictures na instead of talagang yung tao yung haharap dun sa painter para i-paint, yung time ni D.O.H. Hill and Robert Adamson, picture na lang yung ginagamit nila para i-draw or gumawa ng portrait ng tao. Okay, we're done with important personalities. Ngayon ay dates naman. Kaya pa? Okay, so noong 16th century, Italian scholars used the camera as a drawing apparatus. So instead of using darkroom, they used a box with a lens and placed a mirror. So yung time na to, box camera na siya. So instead na papasok yung mga artist natin doon sa room para i-drawing yung image, eto naman, gumagamit na sila ng box. Ganun pa rin. Pinaliit lang siya na camera obscura. Nakabox na yon, and then ito yung may sinusuot sa ulo na dark na tela, tapos doon sila nagdo-drawing. Kung ano yung napoportray na image doon sa box camera, gagamit sila ng mirror doon sa loob para kapag nakita nila doon sa upper portion ng kunyari, doon sa upper portion ng box, kapag nakataklob sila ng ganyan, doon nila tinitrace yung image na nakukuha. Then, noong 17th century, camera obscura was built in with a convex lens. Then, noong 1800 naman, si Thomas Wedgwood and Humphrey Davy nakapag-produce sila ng photograms. Noong 1839, katulad na sinabi ko kanina, consider siya as the birth year of modern photography kasi mas nakilala na ng public yung photography. Noong 1848, si Abel Nips de Saint-Victor, he introduced the process of negative on glass using albumen as binding medium. So, dati kasi, di ba, more on gelatin and yung mga sa collodion process, gelatin yung ginagamit. So, dito naman, gumamit siya ng albumen para mas magtagal yung ating mga image na na-capture. Then, noong 1850, the year when photography was already well-developed, meron na talaga tayo yung mga cameras or talaga meron ng mga processes. It was used in art concerned with landscape, portraiture, and architectural presentation. Louis Desiré Blanchard Evard, he introduced printing paper coated with albumen to achieve glossy surface. So, kanina, film, ito naman, nakaka-discover na sila ng photographic paper. Then, noong 1935 naman, the year of colored films. So, dito na talaga yung nakikita natin, may different colors na yung ating mga pictures, colored na siya. And naglabasan na yung different brands ng camera and even yung different types of films. And sinusold na yan on market. Noong 1859, one of the earliest applied forensic science was photography. So, kauna-unahan na ginamit of all the forensics ay ang photography. It was used to demonstrate evidence in a California case, and large photographs of signatures were presented in court case involving forgery. So, mas nauna pa ang photography kesa sa ibang forensic science. Noong 1861, si James Clerk Maxwell, he researches on colors. Noong 1864, si Odell Burke, he first advocated the use of photography for the identification of criminals. So, kasi nung time, sa last slide, previous slide natin, more on evidences lang siya sa court. And then, noong 1864, ginamit na rin ang photography para ma-identify yung mga criminals and documentation, of course, of evidence and crime scene. Then, later, every major police force in England and the United States has rogues gallery. At noong sa Europe and sa US, yung rogues gallery na yon, or photographs of criminals, it became an integral part of almost lahat ng police station on their country. Noong 1882, that is Alphonse Bertillon. Hindi mali lang yun ha, tanggalin nyo itong letter B. That's Alphonse Bertillon, who initiated anthropometric measurements for personal identification and was also involved in various means documentation by photography, which developed into a fine science for criminalistics. Noong 1885, gelatin emulsion printing paper was commercially introduced based film. Nung time na nito, 1885, yung sa gelatin, yan na talaga yung naabutan ng mga nanay nyo or ng mga atit kuya nyo na film. Yun yung glossy na film, na Kodak film, yun na yun. Okay, noong 1890, full corrected lenses were developed kasi yung lenses before, puno siya ng meron siya talagang mga defects. Either merong mga astigmatism or apochromat, so didiscuss natin yan later on, yung mga lens defects na yan. Then, noong 1890s, saka pa lang na-correct. Kaya yung time na yon, noong 1880s pababa, either yung mga nakukuha na pictures ay blurred, malabo, o kaya naman may mga parang white na patsi-patsi or black. And nung 1890s pa lang, nakapag-develop ng correction para doon sa mga lens na yun. Para ma-correct yun, mawala yun. Para maging maganda, sharp, and crisp yung photos. Noong 1902, si Dr. R.A. Rees, a German scientist, contributed heavily to the use of photography in forensic science and established the earliest crime laboratory. Saan? Saan kaya yung pinakaunang crime laboratory? Take note of that kasi lalabas yan sa quiz nyo. So, make sure na natatandaan pa either sa criminal investigation or sa intro to crime. And noong 1906, a plate was placed in the market that could reproduce all colors in equivalent shades of gray. Noong 1907, the Lumiere color process was introduced, a panchromatic film also with blue, green, and red filter. Noong 1910, si Victor Balthasar developed a method of photographic comparison of bullets and cartridge cases, which acts as an early foundation in the field of ballistics. Noong 1935, color process came out together with electronic flash. 1947, si Edwin H. Ladd, he introduced Polaroid. Polaroid is a one-step photography. Okay, so take note again of that. Edwin H. Ladd, 1947, he introduced Polaroid, also known as the one-step photography. 1960, laser was invented, making possible holograms o yung tinatawag natin na 3D or three-dimensional pictures. You research also on the meaning of the word laser. So may mga corresponding meaning yan. The light amplification, okay? Noong 1970, you research on that the laser. 1970, colored photography has matured as an artistic medium, especially in the work of Helen Levitt and William Eggleston. So talaga more on colored photography yung kanilang mga kinukuhaan na photos. More on colored na. And 1988 is the arrival of the true digital camera. Digital cameras, yung mga ating mga SLR. Okay, and then later on, naging DSLR. Okay. Ito yung view from the window at Legra during the 8-hour exposure. So the sunlight illuminates the building on both sides. Ito yung kinuhaan ni FOSC TALBOT. So yan ay view from Legra. Again kung makikita nyo, 8 hour of exposure. And this is an image of a latticed window in Lacock Abbey noong 1835. Iyan ay kinuhaan ni Talbot. And that is considered as the oldest photographic negative in existence. Again, so kapag tinanong ko kayo, ano yung oldest photographic negative in existence? Then, an image of latticed window in Lacock Abbey. Yung dapat nyo isagot. Yung dapat ay complete yan. Hindi pwedeng lattice window in Lacock Abbey. Kasi madami namang ganyan hanggang ngayon. kailangan ito, an image of lattice window in Lakakabi noong 1835. So again, yan ay kinuhaan ni FOSC Talbot. Okay, so that's all for our discussion for this week on the history and yung uses, functions, and principles of photography. So reminder lang for your laboratory nitong susunod na meeting natin or this week din, sa Google Classroom, mag-send ako ng PDF copy of your laboratory exercises and ipiprint out nyo yun. Kung wala namang printer at wala namang mapagprintan, then you will need a short bond paper and lagyan nyo lang ng lagyan nyo ng 1/2 inch on all sides margin. Okay? And then medyo i-pattern nyo na lang din doon sa format na ibibigay ko, na isasend ko sa PDF doon sa Google Classroom natin. But then again, dalawa yung pamimilian nyo ha. Either ipiprint out nyo yung mismong laboratory activity or gagawa kayo ng or doon sa short bond paper ay doon nyo ilalagay yung gagawin nyo yung format doon mismo manually sa bond paper na bibili nyo, and yung sizes noon ay 1/2 inch on all sides yung margin, and medyo i-format nyo na lang doon sa the same format lang din doon sa PDF na isasend ko. And kailangan nyo din, of course, ng pencil. Mag-secure kayo ng pencil, ng ballpen. Ang ballpen ang i-allow ko lang ay black. Hindi ako mag-a-allow ng any colors of pen. Kailangan ay black ballpen, black ink. Coloring materials, kung wala namang coloring materials, okay lang. Ruler and notes. Okay? Doon sa notes nyo, hindi lahat ng kunyari, hindi lahat ay kailangan copy-paste. Kailangan ay kung ano yung talagang naintindihan mo, natandaan mo. Hindi dapat copy-paste, okay? And then, kapag nagawa nyo na yun, you will take a photo, pipicturean nyo yung inyong laboratory activity, and then isasend nyo ulit sa Google Classroom. Nakuha? Okay, so isasend nyo siya ulit sa Google Classroom. Hindi pwedeng gumawa ng type. Kailangan ay talagang sulat kamay. Okay? Doon sa mga hindi magpiprint out ng PDF ng format ng ating laboratory activities, kung ano yung nakalagay doon sa format na sinend ko, kailangan yun din yung makikita ko doon sa ginawa nyo. Okay? Kung may nakalagay doon na objectives, materials, and procedures, isusulat nyo yon doon sa inyong bond paper. Nakuha? And again, make sure lang na in-announce ko yan sa Google Classroom nyo kung hanggang kailan lang ako tatanggap for the laboratory. At kapag lumampas yan for within a week, so within a week tatanggapin ko, but kung lalampas na yan ng another week, may certain deductions na yan. Automatic ay kalahati ang inyong magiging grades. Okay? So, depende pa yan dun sa output ng inyong grades. And, pagdating sa conclusion, wag nyong ilalagay na I therefore conclude, tapos ika-copy-paste nyo na lang yung objective. Hindi. Kailangang mag-reflect doon, ano yung natutunan mo from that activity, ano yung na-realize mo, ano yung mga manare-reflect mo. Kailangan reflection makikita ko doon sa inyong conclusion. Okay? Hindi yung I therefore conclude that the ganto blah blah blah. No. Okay? So, naintindihan. If you have any further questions, you can send me a message from 9 to 5 p.m. weekdays. Okay? Send me a message again 9 to 5 p.m. ng weekdays. So, do not message me, do not chat me on weekend. Okay? So, let's respect each other's space. Okay? So, that's all. And then, for next meeting, ang discussion sa natin is about lights. Okay? Stay safe and God bless.